Therefore, since we have such a hope, we are very bold.
Steve Teel, Very Bold Radio and Podcast, thanking the marksman, as always, for doing such a great job. Hey, come on now. I am excited. This is David Teel, my son / our son, meaning mom gets some credit.
She should get some credit.
She should get some credit. But you were making fun of me earlier because I said our son. Why are you making fun of me?
It sounded funny because we're only 3 people in the room, and so you went from my son to our son.
Yeah.
So unless I really misunderstand the concept of marriage or biology, and Mark is somehow involved, then
It
I
made
think
it
I'm
sound
your
like
son.
Okay,
not
you are
y'all's
my son.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. I'm glad to clear that up. We're gonna have a great time, obviously, because if anybody can ever, keep somebody straight, it's going to be their son. It's the father-son dynamic. And we're going to apparently talk about pineapples at some point. No, we're not. No, we're going to talk about the dangers of the mission field, like eye injuries and things like that. Yeah, for sure.
Totally,
all right.
definitely.
All right, so here's the deal. We are going to for sure talk about, man, I'm just so proud of David. Now, I want to set this up. I've had Samantha on the show. She did about a half-year mission trip in the Netherlands and Romania. Had her on the show. Mom / Chris has been on the show, but not as my guest, but as guest host. Co-host. Thank you. See, I know you'd keep me straight. Have not had Jessica, who is our middle daughter, my middle daughter. Wait, I know it's hurting.
Not mine.
Not yours. Not yours. My middle daughter or middle child, Jessica. We've not had her on the show yet, or her husband, Jordan. So you're kind of, I guess, the second one to get the call.
Yeah, that's exciting.
It is exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting for me. It may not be for you. But here's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about, you've been a missionary, straight out of high school, basically. I mean, for 4 years.
Yeah.
A little bit time kind of at home for a little while. But 4 years, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that. I want you to tell people what you're doing now. Maybe we'll have time to go back and talk about some of your earlier mission work. But it's really exciting, and I want you to tell people about SBS and YWAM. And it's just crazy. It's just crazy to me what you do. And I would trade I had an amazing education, like college education at Oral Roberts University, studied Bible, studied all the other stuff. But what you've been studying in 4 years, I would trade as soon as possible to have all that. So tell us about SBS. Well, tell us,
Yeah. So I work with Youth with a Mission, or YWAM, which is a Christian nonprofit organization that is really just focused on empowering and equipping, people as they maybe go into ministry, or as they just go on to do college, or go on to go back to do ministry in the normal work field. It's really just focused on getting to disciple people so that they can get to share the love of God in a brighter way, basically.
Yeah. And YWAM's all over the world.
Yeah, all over.
All right,
the world.
let's back up. Since you've been doing this for 4 years, you went to Johnson High School here in San Antonio, and then you decided, tell us about your decision even to go instead of the college route right away or anything. What kind of call did you feel like God was saying, no, I want you to do this, and why? How did that happen?
Yeah. Well, I think just growing up, I kind of constantly switched into switched into the different things that I thought I could do. So one moment I thought, I'd love to be a physical therapist, and the next I thought, I'd love to do graphic design, which both of those things were really interesting to me, and I thought I'd be good at it. And I think still would be, yeah. But then as I was a junior and going into senior year, and just thinking about my future and praying about that, I didn't really feel peace about going into university or college now.
I like how you say university.
I know, I tried to switch it.
No way! That was your European
It's just
influence, and we're so glad you're here on holiday as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
I love the European
Yeah.
influence. It's funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I caught that.
Yeah,
University.
I know, and I caught it too, just too late. Yeah, but yeah, just as I was praying about it and just thinking, oh well, I do love graphic design, but I also do love physical therapy. What would I want to study? I just didn't feel peace
Yeah.
about doing that right now, right out of high school.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really sure why, because both were interesting, but
Right.
just didn't really feel peace about it. And so then after that, then I just felt like, okay, well, I have quite a bit of cousins, I feel like, have done
real?
YWAM. I mean, I've counted before, but I want to say 3 to 5. I don't know. Quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to think
Yeah.
of who. Maybe we'll get back to it
Yeah,
later. But
yeah.
a bunch. I would guess on the 5 side.
yeah.
Maybe even more. But anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah. And so growing up, I heard about YWAM and heard, just about all the cool things that it offers, and also I've seen the change in people's lives as they've gone into YWAM one person and then leave just being a completely different person, and that's because of them getting to discover the love of God. And
Yeah.
so then I think for me, I really felt like, oh man, then I don't feel peace about doing university now, but what I really would love to invest in is just my relationship with God as I'm leaving high school and about
Yeah.
to enter into the rest of my life,
Yeah.
adulthood. Then I'd really love to have a foundation on Christ.
Yeah.
And so that's where I felt like, okay, well then maybe it'd be a great time to do YWAM. And then at the time, then I thought, okay, yeah, then I'll do college after university after. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm interested to hear a little bit more, just because I'm thinking like somebody who's watching may have a 16, 17, or 18-year-old that is kind of on track for, okay, well, they're going to go to college, or they're going to go into the military, or they're going to go to trade school, or they're going to do this or that. And as at least as the parents hearing, it's like, oh, there's other options, and they're pretty exciting options. And YWAM is all around the world. So I want you to remind me, you could have gone a lot of places. There's one YWAM base basically in Texas, right?
Yeah,
basically?
there's a couple, but there's
okay.
one really big one in Tyler. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And there's places in California and Colorado and other places. But tell me about deciding to go like abroad, going to Europe.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the process. I'm a bad parent.
That's okay. It's been a while. Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah. It is cool because YWAM is just a huge organization. So like you said, I mean, there's probably a couple bases in every state, and then there's, several bases in what feels like almost every country. Not quite.
Yeah.
But that's how it feels. So all across Europe, Africa, South America,
It's crazy.
Asia. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. And
if you haven't heard of YWAM, Youth with a Mission,
Yeah.
I mean, you just would think, what? But it's everywhere.
Yeah.
All right.
And it's very, very international. It's not just Americans or North Americans going to these different countries, but wherever you go, it's just a beautiful mixture of just different people from different areas and different tongues, different nations, whatever. It's just a cool picture of the body of Christ. And so I knew that YWAM had bases. That's what we just call our different locations, bases. YWAM has bases all over the world. And so then I went to YWAM's website, and growing up, I played a lot of soccer, love soccer.
Time out. Come on. You're laughing because I'm a dad. I'm a dad.
Yeah.
I am a dad. And you were a great soccer player and a great athlete. I'll leave it at that. You had some mad soccer skills. I'll leave it at that. You were a great soccer player. Okay, I'm done. That's my dad moment for that aspect.
Yeah.
Go on.
And so also what's cool about YWAM, because there are so many locations, and within those locations, so many different discipleship schools, then a lot of schools have different focuses. So some schools might be focused on media, or some schools might
Yeah.
be focused on even acting or dance. So people or students who are wanting to really get to know God, but also
Yeah.
get to know him in the context of one of these spheres in a way,
Yeah.
then they have a wonderful opportunity. And so I, growing up playing a lot of sports, but also a lot of soccer,
True.
then I wanted to do a school that, focus on God, of course, but then also get to learn how to take God and then how to take that to others in the context of like sport ministry.
That's funny. I kind of forgot that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so then on YWAM's website, they have a little search bar, and you can kind of put in whatever you want. There's even schools that also fits for like people who want to become a barber, or
Wow.
there's also schools that have like surfing is involved,
Yeah.
and that's part of the ministry as they reach other surfers. And so it's super cool. So because I played a lot of soccer, then I think I either put in soccer or sports something. And so then when I put that in, then probably 10, 15 different locations came up, because all those places have sports ministry or soccer ministry. And so there's like a place in Orlando, a place in Uganda, a place in Chile, I think, and then also a place in England. And those are the four that really stood out to me the most. And I think the place in Chile, I thought, that's great, because it was really focused on soccer. And then Orlando just felt like, that's cool, because they also have a huge like sport complex, basically, where they run a lot of ministry out of. And then Uganda also had a similar sports complex. And then really what stood out to me with England is, because growing up playing so much soccer, then I mean, how many mornings did I wake up at 6:30 to watch a Saturday morning soccer game?
True.
Yeah.
Not just any team, though.
Yeah, not just any team, but Liverpool. I'm a huge Liverpool fan. Yeah.
You are.
Yeah.
So did that help your decision to go to, it's Harpenden, right?
Yeah. So it's in a tiny town of just I forget if it's like 9 or 15,000. It's a tiny town of 9 to 15,000 people. The town is called Harpenden. It's a 45-minute drive northwest of London, so it's not
That's
far.
pretty close.
Yeah, it's pretty close. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you get to go to any Liverpool games?
Not any Liverpool games, no.
But you went to.
No. So then there's Harpenden is right next to another town called Luton.
Okay.
And there we went to. I went to 2 or 3 games, which was pretty great, because if you know soccer and know English soccer, the fans are just so into it. And this club was in like the 2nd or 3rd division, which then just makes it that much more like genuine. I don't know. It's very authentic. It's not all about the money. It's people are there for the game. Yeah. So it was fun. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So when you were in Harpenden, so as I look back, and that was a while ago, you've done a lot, and we're going to be talking about what you're doing with SBS School of Biblical Studies, and we're going to be talking about your new role with that. And I want people to understand like what SBS is, because you don't just go to SBS, you go to DTS, which is what?
Discipleship Training School.
And that's where you start with YWAM.
Yeah.
So, and your DTS in Harpenden was kind of a sports focus, but in my brain, I don't remember like a ton of sports. So just remind me, or how did that work?
Yeah. So basically the layout of DTS, Discipleship Training School, is most schools are 5 to 6 months long, and then 3 of those months will be for the training. So it's a lot of lectures. It's just a lot of different classes focus on discipling the students, basically getting to teach them who God is, but also getting to help them build their relationship with God. And so that will be 3 months, and then the second 3 months will be outreach, and so that will be a missionary trip to, all over. I mean, each different location will then send teams to different locations. So some teams will be sent to the U.S., and then some teams are sent to Asia or South America or Europe or wherever. But yeah, because like my school then also had a focus on sports ministry, then also like one day in the week, then we would be focused on like, okay, well, how do we then bring what we're learning about God into ministry, and how we can reach others using sports. So one of those days, then we would get to play games, which is great.
That's great.
that's just fun. But then also we learn about, how we could run different ministry events, basically.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit, and since we're there, I do want to hear a little bit about your mission trip to Uganda, right? Mm-hmm. But tell me a little bit just about your relationship growing in Christ at that DTS. Mm-hmm. I mean,
I think so. Of course, I grew up in the church with having a pastor as a
lucky
dad.
You.
Yeah, lucky
you.
Lucky
wow.
me.
Every kid.
Yeah, really. And so I grew up in the church, and I feel like I always had a relationship with God, but I didn't really understand who he was. I kind of felt like, growing up, well, looking back at it, I think growing up, I viewed God as kind of being a really harsh like coach, and maybe that's just because I played a lot of soccer or something, but I viewed him as being someone who's really trying to like just constantly order you around, go do this, go do that. And I felt like maybe he was someone who was just really angry or very controlling, and if you didn't do it his way, then you're out on the highway, I guess. And I think a large part of that was probably growing up in the church. Then I also would hear a lot of things of like, but God in the Old Testament is the same as God in the New Testament and Jesus in the New Testament. But growing up, I just didn't understand that, and I didn't really believe that for myself, because I felt like Jesus in the New Testament was just this cool hippie guy who's just going around just saying just love, love. And then I would go read the Old Testament as, I don't know, a 10-year-old. And then you read some of these stories about people turning into pillars of salt, or people, being, I don't know, pulled into the ground or something.
Drown into the Red Sea. I mean, all sorts of things.
So growing up, I just didn't really understand how you can reconcile that a bit. And so I think that's kind of what led to my view of God being more an angry guy who, if you've fallen short once, then surely he wants to smite you. That's kind of how I felt, because I think I saw Israel, who, of course, falls short of glory many times, and you see how then God is wanting to correct them. And then probably as a 10-year-old, then I saw, well, Israel's sinful, and I know I'm sinful, and I'm also broken. So then clearly God must want to do this or do that to me as well. And then I kind of saw Jesus as the guy who was just like jumping in front of the bullet and was like stopping God from punishing me, or being the hero versus the bad God or something, the angry God.
Sure.
And so I knew God, but I didn't know his character. He felt a bit of a stranger or something, or a scary figure that I didn't want to really approach. But I still would pray, and also ask for his guidance, and I also wanted to love others as that's the body of Christ. And so that's kind of what that was my view of God going into DTS. And I also I knew that like I didn't really trust in his goodness, because I felt like I didn't understand the difference between Old Testament and New Testament. And so that's also what I was hoping for during my discipleship training school, is that I could really just get to know him and get to really grow in understanding of who he is. And yeah, so then my experience, man, I want to say it was probably like the third or fourth day I got there. Then I forget what happened, but I was, talking to one of my staff members who's there to just help disciple us. And I just remember breaking down and just thinking like, or just saying to her like, yeah, I just don't feel like I could ever be loved by God. Like I just didn't feel like I was good enough, or that his love was big enough for me, really. And I remember her just saying like, no, like, don't worry. Like this is going to be an amazing time, and you will discover the love of God that is so much bigger than how we've fallen short. And so right then already I felt really hopeful and just excited. I felt like, okay, yeah, something is going to happen. And then as the months went by, that's exactly what happened. I'd say during the school is probably the first time where I really believed for myself that, God actually loves me, and his love and his sacrifice on the cross. I mean, just all of it, that his goodness is just bigger than where I've fallen short. And that there's just a couple weeks where I just constantly felt like I was being hit by the goodness of God. And that's kind of where my whole world flipped upside down, where in the past I constantly felt like I had to do things out of fear, like felt like, oh, I can't step on God's toes. I don't want to cross him. I don't want to do this. Now all of a sudden that felt flipped, where I could just get to do things out of love, because I knew, he loves me, and because he loves me first, then I get to love others, basically. And so that changed just everything, basically. And during those weeks then, because I felt like I just had a new life, that's when I was like, okay, well, now that I've really experienced this, like, goodness in my relationship with God, now I want to really go through the Bible and get to really get to understand more of who God is, what is his character, what is his goodness. I want to understand how he is the same in the Old Testament, New Testament, and just get to understand that myself, basically. Which then ultimately led to me wanting to do SBS, which is YWAM's biggest Bible school. It's SBS is School of Biblical Studies, and I say biggest because that takes place over 9 to 10 months. They also have some other Bible schools that will be 3 or 4 months, but this one is 10 months. So that's
So you go through DTS, Discipleship Training School, and maybe we'll for now just pause on. I want to ask you about Uganda, because for people that go into DTS, there is the mission or outreach, right? We call it outreach aspect of it, and that was pretty dang powerful in my humble estimation. Some of the things you got to do, some of the ministry that you've done in the 4 years since you've been doing this, are things in my ministry life I've never done. So I know I always throw out like, man, you preached in a Ugandan prison and were translated in 2 other languages that is crazy. And you were speaking and preaching to like hardened prisoners. And I know I said we'd wait, but now we're here. We're here.
Yeah,
we're not talking about pineapples. We're right here talking about it. Can you, I know it's been a while, but can you just.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. Can you kind of just draw back on your memory to tell us about, I know, what I remember is there's prisoners in different colored suits, and depending on what they're wearing is how long they were in prison, and you were preaching to some pretty hardened convicts, you would think. And you were like 19 years old, dude. Maybe 20 at that point.
I was 20 at that point.
That's crazy. You're in a Ugandan prison preaching Christ. It's
Yeah,
no big
but-
deal to you. You're like,
Yeah, but
Yeah, I
it's weird
guess.
saying this, but like it wasn't. It,
It
just
wasn't a big
wasn't.
deal.
It wasn't me though. Like
Oh.
it didn't feel like it was out of my strength or my ability at
Yeah.
all. But it was just
That's
out
awesome.
of like the overflow of my new discovered relationship with
Yeah.
God. So even going into it, then I felt nervous, but
Sure.
also I just felt like, oh no, but God is just so in
Wow.
this, that yeah, we're blessed that we have connections in the prison so that we're allowed to come and get to bless them, and we're just there to be a blessing. But yeah, the prison, I was thinking about this the other day. I
Yeah.
think there was like we were walking into this prison, which we went to a couple different prisons.
Okay.
One time we went to a women's prison, and this time was a men's prison. And we're walking in, and our contact who worked with YWAM, but also had been in relationship with this prison for I think a couple years, probably, maybe even longer. I don't know. He was basically just briefing us of, okay, what's going to happen? What is it going to look like?
Yeah.
And for some reason, we weren't being briefed until we were walking in, which looking back at it is kind of funny. But
Yeah, that is funny.
He was just explaining something like, yeah, you're going to see like men in three different colors of suits, basically.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the colors, but it might have been like yellow, green, and orange or something,
Yeah.
something like that. And basically just each suit represents like how long their sentence was. So maybe it was that yellow was like 1 to 5 years. Green was then 6 to 15. And then the last one was then like they're serving life in prison. So I don't know, 15 plus or something
Right.
like that. And he was like, but like don't let that fear you, like but just like that's why you see different colors and different things like that. And he was like, we're gonna walk into this prison, and it's just a big courtyard, and there's like a tiny soccer field, and then you'll just see this huge tree, and basically we're just going to host this meeting, this gathering under this big tree,
Under
which
the
is
tree.
which is just so cool. It's a beautiful tree, and we still had a little pulpit like just sitting right there, and then we just had rows of benches where then the men would then sit in. And it was cool. It's funny because like as we got there, we were just talking to some prisoners, and I don't know, we were just talking about the soccer field or something, and they're even saying like, oh yeah, and we're always divided in our teams based on the colors of our suits, because that is just
Makes
practical.
sense.
Makes sense.
Oh
yeah.
my
And so he was saying something like,
Oh,
yeah, and the yellows we call like the Brazilians, because the Brazilian soccer team is always in like a yellow top, basically.
Right.
And for me, that just felt like really comforting in a way, where just growing up watching soccer and then just seeing like these are just brothers, like they're just guys, they're just people, and they're coming to us. They didn't have to come, it was optional, but they're coming to this gathering just because they're hungry for the Lord. And it was cool. We got there, and we had I don't know, 30-45 minutes of praise and worship, and that was just the coolest like the coolest, I don't know, the most alive atmosphere that I've been a part of in any church event at all. Like it was just the most like genuine I've felt like the worship was in the atmosphere, and it was so cool. Like so different, of course, from like your normal like American worship set with Elevation or Hillsong or whatever, but they had like 5 dudes on different drums, and then they had like I don't even know how to explain it. I should look up what it's called. No, but like they had like this thing that I want to like explain that it was almost a guitar, but not at all.
Okay.
It was like, yeah, I don't know. It's like on the ground. It had a big box, and then this huge like pole coming out of it, and then strings coming down. So like almost guitar,
Okay.
almost harp. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it was like a cool like deep bass sounding instrument. And
Yeah.
I've never seen the instrument again, but they had like 3 of those just working together, and then the drums, and it was just, I mean, it really just felt so alive.
Yeah.
Everybody was just singing from what felt like a deep heart of reverence or just personal intimacy with the Lord, which then I knew I was going to preach. One of my teammates was going to give just like a 10-15 minute testimony, and then I was going to preach for
Wow.
I don't know, 40 minutes or something.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Maybe longer with the translation. But so then as the worship was going, then I just felt just so calm in the presence of God, because that's just when I realized like I don't have to be nervous about like how I come off. Like I don't have to be nervous about like, oh, will they accept me, just a foreigner who's then coming in, or like I could just drop my insecurities a bit, because I just felt so much God's presence in the atmosphere.
Yeah. Wow.
And so then I just wanted to, it was my joy to then take part in that. It was my joy then to just get to share something
That's good.
that I was learning. So so then my friend gave testimony, and then I was preaching. A lot of fun. It was translated into 2 other languages, so it was just so funny. Like I had a guy on my left, a guy on my right, and they had their Bibles in their language, and so I would say whatever sentence, and then one guy would quickly say it, then another guy quickly say it, then me, and then just constantly like that. But it was really cool. Just the guys on the benches were just so in it. They were just just so present in what God was saying at that gathering. So it was really, really cool.
That's amazing. Do you remember what you kind of preached on? I'm not going to ask you to preach again, but do you remember?
Yeah, not really.
Okay.
I think it was something about like trusting in the promises of God, because I remember using Numbers 13, where then Israel sends the 12 spies into the land of Canaan, where you have Caleb and Joshua who are all for it, but then the rest of the spies are saying, no way. And of course, Caleb and Joshua then are remembering God's promise. I mean, they're seeing the giants that are in the land, but they're remembering God's promise. So I was sharing something about trusting in God's promise, and I think I also use
That's good.
David and Goliath, how David was the one to trust in the faithfulness of God. Meanwhile, the rest of the army of Israel is standing there, but you have the shepherd boy who's remembering it. So it's something about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. All right, let's get back to SBS.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier, you decided, hey, well, I want to know more about the character of God. I want to go deeper or whatever. So tell us what SBS actually is, as far as the 9 or 10 months and what y'all do during that time. Then we can go in deeper.
Yeah, so SBS is it's a 9 to 10 month school. And it depends on the location. Our location then in Amsterdam is almost 10 months. And it's basically 10 months of just getting to study the Bible in detail, and at the same time also getting to study the historical context of when the Bible was taking place. And so it goes through the whole Bible, which you for me, like when I heard 10 months and was like, oh, great, studying the Bible for 10 months, that is a long time. it felt like, yeah, that's a lot of time. But then when you start to go through the Bible, you just realize, oh my goodness, this is never going to be enough time, because there's just so much in it, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a 10-month program, and you're going through each book of the Bible, where you'll probably read through the book at least 5 times, depending on the study, or also sometimes the student. You could probably even go up to like 8 times.
Crazy.
So by the end of SBS, you'll read the Bible probably 5 to
At least
something,
the very
books
least 5
8 times. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, and then of course also getting to study and have classes on the historical context. Then
Right.
you get to bring those 2 things together, which then just brings that much more out of the book. It's pretty special. And so in SBS, you're do what is called the inductive Bible study, and so that's basically this is just like the thought process that we try to train the students in, is to first look at, okay, what is the text saying? And then the second step is understanding, okay, what would this have meant to them in the original context? How would they have reacted to, I don't know, what Paul is saying? How would this have changed their lives? That's the second step. And then the third step is where we try to bring it to us today, where we try to think, okay, well, how can we also then live this out? How can we then just get to carry out the same principle that they're learning then? How can we then do that today?
So that's kind of the application part?
That's
is
application.
Bridging. Okay.
Yeah, so the 3 steps are, like, the first one is observation, understanding seeing what is being said. The second is interpretation of, like, all right, trying to understand, what would this have meant to them? How would they have reacted? What would this have taught them? And then the third is application, where we try to apply this to our lives.
This is a great education. That's where I'm saying, because we're talking about the Bible, and we're not just talking about just reading on your own and just, that was really cool, and I read through the Bible, but I don't really understand it anymore. You guys are doing a deep, deep dive, 9-10 months, and to read the Bible and study the Bible. It's, through 5 times. And that blows me away. That's why I said, I love my education, and I got to go to grad school too. But, man, what you've gotten, if you'd just done that, that would just be amazing. But then there's more, of course. Yeah. So was it, once you got in there and you're like, it sounds like, 10 months, that's some time. And then you get into it, and it's pretty, it's not pretty. I can't even say pretty. It's intense, right?
Yeah, it's intense. Yeah. Yeah. Most, most students, like, your work week will be 40 to 60 hours, where in a week we'll often have probably like 3 to 4 lectures in the week. A lecture will be 3 hours long, so that'll often be 9 to 12 hours, some weeks more, some weeks less. And then the rest of the time is when the students go through their assignment, where that's doing the whole process of for them studying the culture. So then they write kind of a report on what would have been the culture of that book, or if it's a letter, like the letter to the Philippians, then they're doing research on the city of Philippi and trying to understand, okay, how would Philippi, how would that have been different to the culture in Corinth and the Corinthian church? And so then it's really trying to understand the original reader as well as possible. And then they are going through the book, and they have 5 different reads, and each time they'll focus on a different thing. So maybe one time they're focusing on, like, kind of the bigger theme of the book, what is the big picture, and then the second read, maybe they'll go really into the details and try to understand, okay, what is Paul saying, or I don't know, in the Old Testament, what are these laws saying? And so it's really going into details, and in those 5 reads, each time they're looking
something different.
Something different. Yeah.
So that time through, so this is kind of just looking at it in basic ways, your second year of of mission work, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So, how did it for you? I mean, just during that time, I mean, what do you look back and say, yeah, it really did help me because A, B, or C? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
how did it help you?
Yeah. I think kind of what I was saying earlier about my understanding of God, or my misunderstanding of who he is in the Old Testament, New Testament. I think that's really what changed the most. That's where I really got to see, like, first we studied the New Testament because it helps, since we are very familiar with the idea of Jesus if you're a Christian. And so we'll go through the New Testament. For me, that was really cool, just because that's when I just got to see the sweetness of Jesus, and really get to see how radical he really was. At the same time, also calling us to live set apart and be a light in the darkness. And that, was really cool time. But then as we started to go through the Old Testament, that's when, once again, it felt like an entire new flip of just my understanding of God's faithfulness and God's gentleness and patience as you're going through like the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Leviticus, Deuteronomy. Then, like, really you just see the gentleness of God as he is constantly remaining faithful to creation, to Adam, Eve, to Abraham, to the Israelites. He is just constantly remaining faithful despite the amount of times that they are living faithless. They're just constantly running away. Still, God is seeking reconciliation, and he is just enduring their faithlessness, and that's just out of the goodness of his heart. And I think for me, that's where those things really, those switches started to be switched. Those lights were being lit as then I got to see, God is just so good, and he is constantly seeking reconciliation. And that's where I started to really see, like, oh man, this is also Jesus. This is just the exact same heart, the exact same ministry, the exact same mission. It is just the same.
Wow.
And I think for me, even a cool moment was then seeing in Deuteronomy, in the last couple chapters, like chapters 27 to 31, which the book of Deuteronomy is super cool artifact that we carry around so casually, because it is literally a covenant between Israel and God. It's written in the exact same format as treaties would have been written in those days between two nations.
Wow.
And so it's really what Israel had as, like, physical proof of, this is the covenant we have with God. And so then, as in the last couple chapters, you have, like, the blessings and the curses. If you follow the law and look to honor me, then you will be blessed. But if you're living for yourself, if you're doing this, if you're not caring for the poor, if you're not doing this, then you will be cursed, and these things will come upon you, which the blessings and curses is a normal thing for treaties in those days. That was in every treaty, really. But then what was so cool for me then, I forget if it's Deuteronomy 30 or 31, but basically then God says, after you reject me and you do all these evil things and these curses come upon you, after there's just so much heartbreak for God, then he says, when you turn back to me, then I will restore you just as your forefathers, and I will look to bless you. And I think for me, that's when I really just saw, like, this is exactly the prodigal son, the exact same thing, where you just have God, Jesus. I mean, it's just sharing how, like, even after being rejected, still the Father is there looking to bless and looking to restore the Son, or looking to restore Israel. And I think that was a big switch, when just getting to see, oh my goodness, this is just the goodness of, like, what I felt like the cool hippie Jesus in the New Testament. It's the same heart of just grace and forgiveness and reconciliation, as we see God is promising to the Israelites in the Old Testament.
Dang, that connection that you made with that passage and with the prodigal son, because the prodigal son is like the picture, if you're going to paint one picture of Jesus' love and grace and mercy.
Yeah.
And to make that connection, I've never made that connection. I mean, and I've read that passage recently in Deuteronomy, so that is so cool.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any other like little connection points? Because the reason I ask, and you can drink water if you want for a second. The reason I ask is because the Old Testament, New Testament thing still, comes up. There's people probably listening today, and maybe that helps somebody. But, and I know that's an easy thing for non-Christians who maybe aren't even really seeking God, but are just like, the Old Testament God is such a jerk. He's so mean. Yeah. Is there anything else that like helped you or that you could relay to somebody listening?
Yeah,
because that was powerful.
Yeah, I think for me then another cool thing is then when we started to go into the prophets, the prophetic books, which at least for me growing up, seems so scary because so much of the books feel condemning, or I think especially when you don't read the books in the context of who the Israelites were in those days, then it can feel like God is just being very harsh or unforgiving. At least that's how I was growing up. But then as we went through the prophets and as we got to study, like, okay, what was Israel or Judah like in those days? And you really got to see, like, oh, they were just living in pure selfishness and pride, really, over a span of 300, 400 years. And then you're reading the prophets in that context, and you're getting to see really, so much of the prophets, especially like you'll see in Amos or Hosea or Isaiah or Jeremiah. You'll really see like what God is judging is just Israel or Judah's pride. And Israel and Judah just took so much pride in them being the people of God, them being the chosen people, and just they were doing all these religious things because we're supposed to. So they would still follow the Jewish festivals, or they would still do the different religious sacrifices or rituals. But then when you're going through these prophets, Amos, Hosea especially, but also Jeremiah, Isaiah, and other ones as well, then you really see how God is really trying to correct them, because they've completely missed the plot. They've completely missed the point, because God will say, like, put away your songs of worship, or put away your religious sacrifices. I don't care if you sacrifice 1,000 rams or something. He says something like that, Micah 6:6. Put away all these things, because none of this means anything if you aren't then showing love to your neighbor, or you aren't caring for the poor or the widow or the orphan or sojourner. Those are 4 people groups that God is constantly trying to like reach in the prophets, and you could just feel God's heart being broken as Israel or Judah is taking so much pride in, but we are the chosen people of God, and we're worshiping you, and thinking because we're the chosen people of God, we can't do any wrong, really. And meanwhile, God is just saying you've completely missed it, because if you're singing how I like then put it in to my context, it's like if you're going to church and you're singing all these songs, singing Bethel, who I love, or Elevation, it's great music. If you're then like, yes, God is so good, but then the very next day then you aren't showing love to your neighbor, or even like you go to a restaurant right after church and you're being rude to a waiter or something, then I just see how God then in the prophets is just so heartbroken. He's like, don't you see, like, what do I require of you but to, love, act,
walk humbly,
do justice, and, live with kindness. Which is also fun word, because kindness then comes from Hebrew word chesed, which is so much bigger than kindness, but it is like a relational love that is really wanting to do good onto others. So it's not just like she's a kind person. I think when I think of kindness, it's I think very watered down, like, oh, they're just a kind person. But Micah 6:8 is like such a bigger calling than just being kind, but it is really to do justice, carry out justice, which God talks about so much in the prophets for the sojourner, widow, orphan, and to then love kindness and want to do good to others, and then to walk humbly before him, to walk humbly with him. And I think that really just changed my understanding of God's heart for creation, as he's really wanting to reach the individual. Like he's wanting his body, which in that time, like Israel and Judah, that was like his representation on earth. They were called to be a kingdom of priests, and so then God is wanting to use them to bless others, but they just completely lost hold of that, because they're just starting to live with so much pride and wanting to do what is best for them, when God is saying that is none of that matters. Your songs, your praise, whatever, doesn't matter if you aren't then loving your neighbor right next to you. And I think that was really cool. But then what was even cooler for me then to then go read the Gospels, or go read Luke specifically, which I think Luke as an author then is highlighting even more how Jesus is there for the sinner, and there for the lost, and there for the least in society. And that's why you see he's going to all these different people in Israel who are cast off in society. And Jesus is there wanting to seek them. He is there to love them. And for me then, just as God was telling Judah or Israel, like, I don't care about your worship if you aren't caring for those people next to you. Now this is what I felt like was Jesus and God then doing exactly what God was asking them to do. So is God now on earth then showing, like, this is how you are to love your neighbor. And so for me then it just felt like exactly what God was calling them to do, then he took on to his own shoulders to then lead us in getting to do to our neighbors. So for me that just connected, like, oh yes, this is just the same heart, same mission.
Same heart. Yeah. Wow, that's good. That's really good. Oh, that's powerful. Yeah, take some water. I want to talk then about you going to staff, and we'll take like 7 minutes. We'll get to 60 minutes. So, but talk to me then. So you finish SBS. It's powerful. That everything you just shared with us was really strong, really good. And then you've got a decision to make somewhere along that of, do I stay in YWAM and actually become staff, or do I go back to the States or whatever? So you don't have to go into big detail, but tell us basically what happened.
I think ultimately, just as I was going through the Bible and just being what felt like completely changed again by just the goodness of God, that's really when I felt like, oh man, I would just love to be able to help others find that same peace and joy in God and in the Bible. Because I had just discovered so much more joy. I wanted to help others then discover that same joy.
That's cool.
And It's really cool because those who are on staff for SBS School of Biblical Studies, then really their primary role is just getting to act as a shepherd to the students. So when I was a student, we had 22 or 23 students, and then we had 6 or 7 staff maybe, and then like each of the staff then would be assigned then like 3 students each over a span of 6 weeks, and they would just walk with those students. So as the students are studying these different books, as they're studying maybe the letters in the New Testament or books in the Old Testament, then the staff are really there to challenge them, of getting to help them understand, okay, what is this book really about, and also challenge them, and also thinking, okay, but how can you live this out? What are you learning, and how can you then really carry this to your neighbor? And so they're just there not to act as a therapist or anything, but just really get to partner with the individual and get to help them just discover more of God and get to help them grow, basically. And I think my heart is, I really love just getting to see the individual. Like I love getting to know people, and that's not just like introducing myself. Saying, "Oh, hi, I'm David," but more so getting to really understand, like, okay, but who are they? What drives them? Or, what are their gifts? Or, but also like, oh, but what are they struggling with in their relationship with God? How is God wanting to help them find peace or freedom? And so, for me, it just felt kind of the perfect place to be, as I just felt, I was so in love with God and his testimony in the Bible, and at the same time wanting to just love individuals and just get to walk with them. So it felt like the perfect place to be.
So that's what you did. So year 1 was DTS, Harpenden missions in Uganda. And then year 2 is SBS in Amsterdam. And then during that time, you decide, well, I'd like to shepherd and help the next people that are coming through. So for year 3, you join the staff, and that's when you become a missionary that is raising support to help you to accomplish your mission and live and eat food and things like that. So that is... So let's see. I'm losing track now. So you do that, and it goes well. You shepherd and everything. And that was kind of like a 2-year commitment, basically. Not that, life can get in the way or whatever, but you had a 2-year commitment. You go back this year. It's going well and everything, right? And then tell us about your new opportunity, if you would.
So like you said, I've been staff for the last 2 years, and I've had a super cool leader the last 3 years, 2 years as a staff and 1 year as a student. And
what's his name again?
His name is Lawrence, which the Dutch way then is pronounced Loudens. But
okay.
He's okay with being called Lawrence, and it's a very international organization. So often you'll just be called Lawrence probably. And he's just super cool. Has beautiful heart for the Bible, has such an academic brain. It's beautiful, and then also has a beautiful heart for people. But then unfortunately next year then he's it's exciting for him and his wife as they're then stepping back from YWAM, and she's gotten a really cool job with a Christian media organization in the Netherlands, basically. That has TV, and she's working as as an assistant to producers and the broadcast basically,
Yeah.
and she's working her way up to becoming a producer for some of these shows. And so
Wow.
that's really exciting
Right.
opportunity. But then also because of that, they're having to move away from Amsterdam. So then, unfortunately, then for us, then he's having to step down as being one of the leaders for the school. So then because of that, then actually then myself and two of my colleagues or coworkers, whatever, who also happen to be two of my closest friends.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We're now stepping up and leading the school together.
Yeah.
Which is really, really exciting. It's going to
super
be a lot of fun.
exciting.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's a big deal, dude.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
That's crazy. So what's fun about it so far? I mean, that was a big decision. Like, you guys could have decided, like, okay, I mean, you had to step up, or maybe that school just, and there's plenty of SBSs around the world, but it kind of could have just disbanded or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's a big prayer decision, and it sounds, I know you're a team guy, so you and your teammates are really praying about it. And did it become pretty clear pretty quick that?
Yeah, I think we had about a month to really pray about it.
Okay.
And seek where we felt like God was leading us as individuals, but then also we did want to do it as a team, because we trust that God is also speaking to all of us, and God is just a heart for community and fellowship. So we wanted to also seek it together. And I think, we had a month to pray, but I think already after a week or a week and a half, then we were already just talking about it and just felt so much excitement for the possibilities, or just what the school can look like the next couple of years if we then stepped into leadership. So we just felt a peace, and also I think even more than peace, like it was just an overwhelming feeling of excitement of just okay, God can do something cool out of this.
Awesome, man. All right, and I know the Marksman's been putting pictures up of you, like you have guest lectures that come in, but you also get to lecture, and I have in front of me, and for the next hour I'm going to read this to our viewers. Just kidding. Your amazing writing document on Ephesians, which I've only got to read a few pages, but it's fantastic. I mean, it's so dang good. So this is something you lectured on, yes?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I've taught a couple books.
Ooh, I got to read this part.
Last year,
You talk.
I taught the Book of Ruth, which was just a one day lecture, so 3 hours on the Book of Ruth, which was a cool experience, because when I first studied Ruth as a student, I was like, it's cool, but didn't necessarily change my life. But then when going to study the book now as I was going to teach it, then that's really when, boom, I just really felt blessed by the Book of Ruth, because it is just filled with so much beauty. And then this year I also taught Ephesians, which then actually was a week of lectures. So I think I taught 4.5 days basically. But it was also one of the first weeks in the school. So you're teaching the book, but then you're also teaching the students the method of how are we studying, and what should homework look like, and why do we do these different steps in the homework? How does that build on one on top of the other? And so it was 4.5 days of teaching. Probably half was on Ephesians itself, and then half on the assignment, the homework.
And what did we decide? You wound up basically, though, doing a lecture, on Ephesians for like 25 hours or something?
It's a lot.
20 to 30 hours?
Something.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Dang, man, you're an expert on Ephesians.
No, I'm not. No. Yeah, I love the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right. Anything else I want to just share with people just as I don't remember how long this commitment is, and I don't want you to say in case it's so long that your mother falls over fainting. But I think it's at least a couple of years that you're committed to co-leading or whatever, being a part of co-leading SBS in Amsterdam. Maybe somebody is listening though, or watching one of our relatives or friends, and they're like, "Wow, I didn't realize David was doing this. I would like to be on his support team." I know we always say, and we always mean it, pray. Pray for all those things, and you can talk about that. But also, I happen to know that financial support is also a way that people can be on your team. So. Do they need to email you? How do they get in contact with you?
Yeah. Then the easiest thing is then to email me at davidteelmissions@gmail.com. That's the easiest. Also because I have to switch phone numbers quite often, then going to the Netherlands and stuff. So that's the easiest.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I just want to encourage anybody, and then I'll let you kind of just wrap up if there's anything else you want to say. But I just want to encourage anybody that is listening that God is moving on your heart, and maybe God is saying, "Oh man, my kid or my grandson or my granddaughter should really go to YWAM and do this DTS thing." Or maybe someone's listening that's gone through DTS and they're like, "Man, I'm ready for SBS." And maybe somebody is, just hearing God is just saying, "Man, you need to be a part of David's team." And through prayer and through financial support and your generosity, it makes it happen. I'm so excited. I'm on your finance team or whatever.
Yes,
I'm on your support team. I'm excited, man. I could not be more proud of who you are and what God has called you to do. And you are doing it, you're responding, and lives are being transformed literally around the world because you are working with international people, and then they're going to wherever they're going, wherever God calls them next, whether it's to home or to more missions. You are impacting people around this world, and one of my passion, God's word and God's heart, and you're communicating that in such a powerful way. And when we are connected to God's word and God's heart like that, we can't help but the light goes into darkness, and his word comes out through our actions and through our heart and our attitudes and all of it. So what you're doing is just incredible. I mean, I could not be more proud of you.
Thank you.
If you were starting for Liverpool, I could not be, that'd be cool. Don't get me wrong. I could not be more proud. It would be pretty cool. Shoot. But really, I could not be more proud of you. And I just love the gifts and talents and that God has given you. And the way you've communicated today is just wow. I just want to hear more. I know every time you lecture, we're like, "Hey, can we hear those lectures?" And we're serious. Where are those lectures? We want those lectures. We'll talk about that off air.
We'll talk about it.
Anything else you just want to finish off, or a thought that God's put on your heart, or encouragement for somebody, or just anything?
No, I think just I'd say, YWAM is just such a cool organization, and DTS is an amazing experience. And the closest comparison I think of is if maybe you've gone to a summer camp, like a summer Christian camp or something, where maybe you just feel the love of God and you're just on fire, or maybe you've seen your child go to a summer camp and come back changed or different. I just say DTS, Discipleship Training School, is basically a 6 months summer camp.
Man,
basically.
who doesn't want to go to summer camp for 6 months?
Just amazing, because it's the same idea of just getting to reach the individual, but then also get to train them of how can you reach others, basically. So if you're someone in high school or college, or it's also not just for 18-year-olds or people in their 20s, but also older, then really think about it. Maybe you haven't even gone to summer camp in 20 years, but It's really just a cool experience of getting to really meet God. So it's I just
Awesome.
really encourage anyone that if they're feeling like they don't know what is next, or feel like they're stuck or something, then pray about it for sure.
That's awesome. Any shout outs you want to give to your SBS people or anything? Or are you afraid like me that you'd forget somebody?
Oh, I wouldn't know where to start.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got a pretty special team though.
I have a pretty special team. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Anything else?
No.
Man,
Nothing
dude,
else.
that was awesome. That was
it was
awesome.
fun.
We went a little longer than I told you we would.
And
It
I
was
should
too
have
good.
warned you, because
What?
I have been in situations where I'm told I'm supposed to talk for like 5 minutes or something, but then I end up going quite
Like
quite
father,
long.
like son.
Yeah,
Yes.
so when you told me maybe 25, 30 minutes, I knew right then that was not possible.
Oh, okay.
So,
That's cool. It is possible, but I prefer to have people feel like, because to a lot of people, 25 minutes sounds long.
yeah.
And it's
Not for this,
It's
yeah.
not for this, but I'd rather like start with that idea, and then if we wind up talking in an hour and 10 minutes, beautiful.
Yeah.
If we talk 35 minutes, beautiful. But I know people sometimes they get a little bit nervous, like, oh man, 25 minutes, how am I supposed to talk about that? But you were not. I did not know that. You were not nervous about that at all. Well, it was awesome.
Yeah,
it was
thanks.
really awesome, man. What fun. What fun. All right, so you've got his email address. Thank you, Marksman, for doing such a fantastic job. David Teel, Missions. He's the Marksman. He likes to be anonymous, and so came up with the perfect nickname for the guy who hits the
Marksman.
target every time.
Oh, and
Yes.
snipers hide. And
Yeah.
Mark is cool.
Mark is very cool. So anyway, thank you again. You just do such great job for us and for all the shows that you do for KSLR and K-Loop, everything up here. So just thank you. And I just want to remind our listeners, the reason that we're called, as you can see my signs behind us. Long story short. Didn't get the signs back from our big shindig we had this past Sunday night. Incredible. If anybody who was there is watching or wasn't able to make it, whatever, I want to say thank you for supporting Very Bold. And we just had a blast. David got to speak. We busted out some scraps. And we talked about Peanut Butter Bowl and everything going on, talked about our coaches ministry. It's so much fun. And just a blast just to share that. So the reason we're called Very Bold is because we want to live in the light of God's love and God's character and God's heart, and just realizing the grace that he really has for us. And I love just the connection of he had that same grace, I mean, really, for Adam and Eve, and he had that same grace for Abraham and the same grace for Moses, and it just goes on and on. So I just love the connections you made. And when we can live in the light of that, and just knowing when that light switch or that connection is made, that I'm loved. I'm loved by Jesus. I'm loved by God the Father. He's not just there to smite me or strike me down or to make me feel terrible. He loves me and he loves you. And when we're just walking the light of that, we just realize the great hope that we have. And it talks about in the New Testament just the unfading glory of the power of the Spirit that lives within us, resides within us, abides in us, and guides us and loves us and is there for us. And with that, that's just an unfading glory. It's from glory to glory. And so the Apostle Paul wrote, and this is why we're Very Bold Ministries, Very Bold Radio and Podcast, Very Bold Athletes, Very Bold Coaches, Very Bold Scrapping, Very Bold, all of it, because that great hope that we have. This is what the Apostle Paul wrote. And you can email me right here to steve@verybold.com. He wrote this: therefore, since we have such a hope, we are very bold.
Therefore, since we have such a hope, we are very bold.